Hello from Los Angeles again. We're going to try to stick to West Coast products for a little bit, so I don't get too much criticism for drinking French wines here. Anyway, so here we are. This is a Cabernet Franc from Washington State. The winery is Avennia. I don't know if you can see that. It's a Avennia Champoux Vineyard Cabernet Franc 2017. Now, as we discussed before, in some of our Chenin and Mark Ryan tastings, Washington is really, first, it's a great wine growing region, but also it's kind of has these major, really world-class vineyards that several different producers have access to. We talked in detail about that when we talked about Mark Ryan in the Yakima Valley, and the Red Mountain and the Clipson and some of the other vineyards that Mark has access to. It's a similar story with Avennia and Champoux Vineyard. Champoux is really one of the mythical vineyards, and it's basically like one of the granddaddies, if you're one of those vineyards. Started a long time ago, close to 50 years ago, changed ownerships a couple of times. Ownership started as a Mercer family, then the Champoux family, then I think 6-7 years ago it passed on to somebody else from a management point of view. And different wineries at different times have had access to this fruit. It's primarily Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. It's in the Horsehaven Hills sector of so if you go straight east on the Columbia Valley, which goes west to east, on the map. There's the range of mountains north of the river facing south, and that's where this vineyard is from. As we discussed before, that was when we were tasting Janwick's Petit Verdot. The Ciel de Cheval that they used was also another expression of the Horsehaven's Hills. That's kind of a funny pun. So anyway, it's south facing, and beyond that range is when you get into the Yakima Valley, which we discussed in the past, about where we have all these other vineyards we discussed with Mark Ryan. Anyway, so it's facing south. It's a little further west than Yakima and Walla Walla. And the tasting room is in Woodinville. Again, as we mentioned before, this is the area right at the edge of Seattle where you have a lot of these wineries have an established tasting room. This is a very new winery. I mean, we started by a startup, basically an angel investor, ex-Microsoft executive, and a winemaker, Chris Pedersen, the winemaker, about 12 years ago. The first vintage was 2012. They very quickly, like Mark did, Ryan, secured access to some very high quality fruit to establish themselves, and they started making all sorts of different. They focus really on the sort of French varietals. So we're talking Syrah, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon, and they make Bordeaux blends and a Syrah, I think one Syrah or maybe two, or a Rhone blend as well. So they have left bank, right bank, more Merlot, then more. We're gonna taste one of their Bordeaux blends soon. This is the first. They started making this not that long ago. The 100% Cabernet Franc from Champoux Vineyards. Chenin used to make a Cabernet Franc from Champoux Vineyard. It was really good, and so but now they lost access to that. They're making it from Finney Hill. Maybe that's the swap that happened there. So I certainly was very interested in trying the Cabernet Franc, even though we visited these guys in Seattle, and we really like their sort of ethos. Very simple, very low involvement, both in the terroir and in the winemaking. Native yeasts, unfined. They're really very focused. Most of their attention on getting the best possible fruit and making sure the fruit is in the best possible shape, which to them is what really drives everything else downstreams. So I had bought some wine then, and since then I've been buying a little more. Anyway, that's a Cabernet Franc. It's very dark. It's got a little bit of that mix between red and purple, if you want, which is typical to that. It's young, but it doesn't really, the alcohol is not very high. We're talking here, it's probably higher than I think. Yeah, it's 15%. But there's no really visible sign of it. On the fruit, on the nose, it's very Cabernet Franc. And this is what I like about Cabernet Franc when it's good. It's just so aromatic. It's just so and incredibly expressive, and they use it in smaller quantities in a lot of the Bordeaux blends to add that element. But when it's really good and you can make a bottling out of it, it's just really very good, and it's usually very easy to drink earlier and very enjoyable. It's not as complicated as the Cabernet Sauvignon. So you've got that red fruit, a lot of really red fruit, just very expressive, coming straight at you right off the bat. It's not closed in any way. A little bit of alcohol when you stir it, that really jumps out. And the sort of niceness, you know, you don't detect any bitterness, any bite on the nose. It's just going to be fruity, but not really, you know, grapey. Just fruity, expressive, happy. To me, Cabernet Franc is a happy wine. In the mouth, you get a little more chocolate, which is, you know, expected. That dark chocolate, smooth dark chocolate. It's not bitter. It's just a little bit of that added dimension. The finish is very nice. It stays with you. The mid palate is a little, you know, maybe a little weak. Maybe this would develop over time because it can happen with young wines. The attack, of course, you feel it right away because of the alcohol, because of the fruit, and the finish stays with you. It's not tannic, I mean, in a way that is, and some people don't like that. They expect, you know, an expensive wine to be tannic and company, all that stuff, but it doesn't really have to be. Making a really harmonious wine that have you scratching your head about trying to find the one sort of, that doesn't have, you know, that you can't really find the one sort of salient point you're going to grab. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing. It's very hard to make beautifully balanced wines like that. So those have their own attraction to me anyway. Really delicious. Cherry, dark, maybe a little bit of the blackberry chocolate. Some pepper, really, now I'm detecting some of that, just a little bit of that peppery, really, we're talking on the finish of the finish. And that's kind of interesting because it just, you don't expect it and it comes in at the end. It's really a delicious wine. And I think, again, I'm all in favor of really good Cabernet Franc if you can find them from a good vineyard and people who know what they're doing. Cheers, see you soon.